And we're back. I'm Professor Scott Plum with the Minnesota Sales Institute. With me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
So you call yourself a sales professional, and that might be true in that you get paid to do what you do, but are you at the top of your game, or are you satisfied to play at an amateur level? We know that professional athletes practice and exercise so that on game day they can be the very best, the most elite of those who play the sport. Shouldn't we strive for that level of competence in our sales careers? So light up your torches and pull up your tights as Scott and I discuss how you sell, keys to professional behavior, and much more on episode 434 of the Get in the Door podcast.
Oh, Bill, I hope we still have our listeners, because the last time we did a topic like this, the hard work of selling, that one has got the least amount of downloads off.
Well, that's, I mean, this will be nicer though. This will be more positive,
okay.
But
all right.
I thought you were going to get me on light up your torches and pull up your tights.
No. I love it. Is it a Monty Python reference?
No, it's an old book. There was a director that kept doing take after take. And he said, all right, boys, light up your torches and pull up your tights. And
okay, that's cute.
So there's a book title by that. So if you want to learn that, go to that book title.
Okay, all right. We'll start with chapter 7 of the book, Beyond Selling Value, of our book club. And the topic is on the power of communications 2 feet in the door.
So it's all about getting in, right?
It is. And ironically, this is the shortest chapter in the book.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty short.
Whoa, okay.
I think there's a lot more to it, though. I think that he starts to break a few things up. If you look on page 122, for those of you who are playing along at home, there's a chart on page 122, and he shows 5 different ways to get in. And I know the access letter is the whole next chapter. So maybe breaking this down a little bit more. I haven't read ahead on this one.
Okay. And they talk about decision makers. That's
getting into the decision maker.
Yeah. And, and us as salespeople, we're decision makers too, because we decide what we're going to do and we're not going to do. And you know what our main competition is inaction. It's people doing nothing.
You're so nice. I call it being lazy.
Oh, well,
inaction is so nice.
It's an action. It's the conclusion quotes Teddy Roosevelt, which is just a fabulous quote. It says, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing.
Right.
And that is right spot on. And Teddy Roosevelt has it right on. And I'll have a video of the man in the arena. If you haven't heard the man in the arena, you can go to the show notes. You can watch a video. You don't have to read anything.
Teddy was a tough guy.
Yeah.
He didn't pussyfoot around. So are we going to talk about the middle stuff? So we talked at the beginning and you did the conclusion. So
right, I did. Okay, let's go over the middle. What did I miss?
Well, the first part he talks about is that the decision maker initiates. So sometimes, praise the Lord, you get a call from a decision maker saying, hey, tell me about your product or service. I think I might need it.
Good.
That happens all the time to you?
Well, it does. And you should close about 80% of those, unless you get in the way. Unless you get in the way or you say something.
You might get 90. You might get almost all of them. You might
get 90.
That's right. If you don't trip over your own tongue.
A good place to start with a call like that is, thanks for calling. I'm kind of curious. What made you decide to call me today? What made you decide
in the book,
to call
you thought it was somebody playing a joke on him.
Right. Yeah. Why did you call me? And then why did you call me today? And I think once you ask that question, you're going to find out some key motivations as to the perception and the reputation that you have in the marketplace and the urgency and motivation that the prospect has to make a change. Because that's one thing that they fear the most is change. Prospects hate to change. And if they're calling you and they want to change, don't stand in the way.
They know it's going to start a sales process. They're not afraid of it. Those are all nice things. This is all why you get into the 80-90% close rate on here if you don't stumble over yourself.
Right.
But I wouldn't count my business career on sitting by the phone waiting for a decision maker to call because marketing did such a good job.
Right. No way. That's not sales.
So the next one they talk about is leveraging a coach. So somebody either internally in the business, I think they're talking only internal on this one,
right.
But somebody internal says, hey, you want me to call Larry for you? You want me to call Mary for you? Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one thing that's very valuable, they talked in that, make sure the coach introduces you in the right way.
Right.
So you're going to make a business presentation to them. You're not going to be selling them.
And to do it in a way that is influential and persuasive, but you're not really getting attached. The coach is not really getting attached to the outcome, and just saying, it's really up to you. I found him to be knowledgeable, him, her, whoever you're referring to, the coach is referring to. I found him to be knowledgeable. I found him to get to the point. I found him to be able to answer your questions. I think it's worth your time. Will you take a phone call from him?
Right.
And I think you get people prepared to engage in a conversation.
Right. And that's what I want them to do. I want them to know that we're going to talk about your business. And actually, I wouldn't go in and make some kind of a big business presentation to them, but I would go in there with a good set of questions, some ideas that I wanted to take to them. I know we're going to get to that business presentation later and learn some valuable things, but I don't want to go in there and have it be one-sided, me talking to them.
A good thing that we need to always keep in mind as salespeople when we're working with the coaches, what do we learn from them too? And I don't think we can always rely on them, but I think we can learn what's effective from them. And then if we want to be able to involve other people to be influencers or referral sources, then we can coach them on how to introduce us on what's most effective and complementing our style and our process in the introduction at the same time.
And I think he's talked in there about the coaches being a great information source about things that you won't find anywhere else, right? So if they're going to make a call for me, I also want to know some more about that person that I'm going to be meeting with before I go in there. The third thing they talked about is the personal request. And that's why I said the coach was inside, because the personal request is somebody outside the organization. I've got maybe a LinkedIn partner, or maybe you've even made the call yourself. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of the chapter when they talk about you making the call, that you're working really hard. You've called them 20 times. And then, you get hold of them and you don't know what to say because you're so surprised that they actually answered the phone.
Yeah, right. So be careful about answering the phone sometimes when it's a number you don't know.
That's right. Oh, I'll tell you, it happens to me all the time, not answering the phone, but if I'm going through my calls, sometimes I get myself mentally ahead. I'm making a call and I look 2 people ahead and then I forget who I called when they answered the phone.
Yeah.
It's important to stay focused on what you're doing, not get your brain outside of what you're doing. When you're going to make that call, every time of those, 1 through 19, be thinking about what it is you want to say, what questions you want to ask, and have that ready. When you finally get hold of that decision maker, when you're making that call yourself, you need to say the right things. You have one shot.
Yeah. And some of the things that your coach can use when they're making that phone call or sending an email is, can I ask a favor? Or I'd be grateful, or I'd appreciate it if you would take a phone call or just spend 15 minutes with them. Would you accept a phone call from them and just spend 15 minutes? And I think most of the time the prospect is going to say, yes, I'd be willing to do that.
Right. That's the value of the partner or the coach, whichever way it goes, right? That outside personal request or that leveraging a coach, you're working off of their reputation to give them a good call. And for most people that I know well, if they said, I think you should sit down with this person, I'll do it. I'll do it as a respectful thing to that person who asked me. And then finally, they talk about the access letter, and that's the whole next chapter.
Great.
So I don't want to get into that too much.
Yeah. But stay tuned for more.
Now, do you want to do the Teddy Roosevelt conclusion? Because now we're at the conclusion.
Yeah, well, I said it earlier, but go to the show notes at getinthedoorpodcast.com and this episode 434, and there's a video there on the Teddy Roosevelt Man in the Arena. Yeah.
Now we have a winner of our giveaway book from Mark and Dan, Beyond Selling Value. Who is that?
It is David Goldman. He is the Laughing Stockbroker. So if you haven't had a chance to see him or hear him, if you see his name come up in a webinar or a Zoom call or anything like that, then be sure to join. And
I know he got in the hat because he made a comment on our website or on the on our LinkedIn
post. Yeah. This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program by the presenters of the Get In The Door podcast. Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the hosts of Get in the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future.
So our key topic today is how you sell, keys to professional behavior. And so the question I ask is, what are the characteristics that define a sales professional? Now, when I look at characteristics, I always drop them into 3 categories. You probably do something similar. For me, those categories are attitudes, skills, and knowledge. And for me, the key one is attitude. What do you have kind of a similar thing you do?
Well, I started my sales development career in the Sandler process. So they have the ABT triangle, the attitude, behavior, technique triangle. Okay. And that's important. And I don't want to discount that. And if that's a system that you subscribe to, then by all means, use it, use what you're comfortable with. But in my experience, I found that there's 3 areas that I find most important, and that's skills and tools is one, behavior, which we're talking about, and mindset. And mindset really incorporates the attitude and the beliefs that we have.
Right.
And if we concentrate on the skill set, the behavior, we have to commit to behavior. And the behavior only occurs when we've got the right mindset, because we've got the right belief system to support the behavior. I do when I start my program, I talk about the quadrant, the 4 areas that I cover. And if you were to just draw up and down and side to side line, in the upper left hand corner, we've got techniques. So there's the skills, the words, the process. Upper right hand corner, we've got the quadrant, or the conceptual. Lower left hand corner, we've got behavioral, and the lower right hand corner, we've got attitudinal. And you'll find that the ones on the right are more soft skills, and the ones on the left, technical and behavior, are the more hard skills. But I cover everything in those 4 quadrants.
Okay. Well, I think that for me, the big one is attitude. I think attitude is so important. And I don't know if you've heard it before. I'm sure you have the attitude quote by Chuck Swindoll. Have you heard that one?
I haven't.
Okay,
but I want to
it's
challenge
called
you on that
Attitude.
a little bit. Yeah.
By Charles. He goes by Charles Swindoll, Swindoll. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude is to me more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people do, think, or say, or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that at all. I love that.
So what are the attitude traits that you're looking for that you hope a professional salesperson has?
I think they need to be optimistic, and optimism has 2 definitions. It's one, it's being hopeful before a decision is made. And the second one is dwelling on the most positive aspects after a decision is made. So it's really 2 sides of the coin, and both of them are practicing optimism. So being optimistic and maintaining that positive attitude. And I always am challenged when I talk about attitude as being important, is somebody in the class saying, well, what happens if I have a bad attitude? How do I change that? Well, and that's a legitimate question. And there's some people that have bad days. So, how do you deal with somebody who has a bad attitude? And I always say, when I have a bad attitude, here's an example of my bad attitude. Is I just work Monday through Friday. Saturday, I made a list of all things that I've got to get done on the weekend, and I'm tired. I get up Saturday morning, and I'm grateful to have slept in a little bit, but I got a list of things that I got to do. My attitude is not the best at that point, but I decide that I am going to get these 7 or 10 things done on my list. And I'm just going to commit to doing it. I'm going to commit to the behavior. And guess what happens about 3:30 in the afternoon is I've completed everything. And how's my attitude? My attitude is pretty rosy.
Yep.
I'm pretty happy at that point.
Yeah.
But if I were to wake up in the morning and say, well, I got these 7 things to do. And you know what? I got a great attitude and I'm singing zippity doo dah. I've got a bluebird on my shoulder all day long, and come 3:30 and nothing gets done. How am I going to feel?
Right.
I'm not going to feel productive at all. So I always say, if you have a bad attitude, commit to your behavior.
I think you're absolutely right that if we're busy, we're doing things, we're productive, and we're accomplishing things, it's amazing how good our attitude can get.
Amen.
And I think, I grew up with what I would call a great family, but a bad attitude family. And that was that we were kind of arrogant and everyone was stupid but us. And I'll tell you, you grew up with that kind of attitude, you drive people away pretty fast. And I took some courses and I started reading. And for 35 years, I've been working on my attitude, and I have to fight it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to change. We're such a product of our environment growing up that if you do have an attitude that needs to be fixed, you're going to have to commit to working on it all the time. And so I think that did you call it optimism?
Optimism, yeah.
Optimism. That's a great one, right? How do you see the world, right? The glass half full or the glass half empty? And I just call that positive. Another one a couple are approachable and friendly. How do you react to people around you? Are you head down with your face in your phone all the time? Or are you up smiling and friendly and look like you want to talk to people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that in the Chuck Swindoll quote, he says to react. The last part of it, you use the word react. And react is an emotional response versus an intellectual response is to respond versus react. So when we're approachable, we can't let other people affect our attitude and be negative or pessimistic or angry. We need to be able to respond, and to respond as an intellectual approach to something that happens to us.
Yep.
And to be able to define the reputation that we want to maintain in the community or our network and respond to people and be cautious about reacting. If there was ever a regret, you probably reacted to something that you did and not responded to something.
A couple other things I've got down. You have to be reliable and trustworthy.
Yeah.
What kind of person are you? If you're not trustworthy, which might be honest, if you're not reliable, somebody who can get stuff done, you won't be around in sales very long because you won't be able to complete a project. You won't be able to be believed when you say something. You talked about reputation, and the reputation is built over time. Who are you deep down? Who are you? Trying to think of the name of the book, but the book is As a Man Thinketh. He says, you cannot be one thing within and another thing without. Whatever you are at your core, that's going to come out in who you are. And so you've got to change, in some cases, who you are to be trustworthy, to be reliable.
Yeah, I think Covey says you can't do good in one area and bad in another. I worked with a company that subcontracts services for general contractors, and they always had a tough time approaching these builders that were the general contractors. And I talked to the salespeople and I said, here's their number one fear. Is the person that they're going to rely on to complete the service going to deliver the reputation and the quality of service that the contractor wants to be known for, and that the general contractor is selling to the home builder or the home buyer? And I said, and here's the example that I want you to think about, is you as a salesperson write out a purchase order, you give it to fulfillment, and you expect them to fulfill it. And what happens when they don't fulfill it the way you write it up? You get pretty upset, don't you? And then you start to lose faith in your production team. That's the same thing as a general contractor.
Right.
So the fear that you have of working with your production team is the same fear that a general contractor has of working with a subcontractor, which is you. So build the confidence.
It's any purchase, right? It's
Yeah,
any business purchase. My reputation as the buyer is on the line. if I say to go with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm making a decision. And if this doesn't go well, I look bad and I could get fired for it. And I can't afford that. So I need someone that I can trust. And that's why we bring in testimonials and we bring in examples. And we say you can call a couple people that I've worked with in the past. So it can overcome that fear that you might not be the type of person who's reliable or trustworthy.
And that's exactly what you're selling, is you're reducing and eliminating the cost, consequences, and risk from the prospect.
Right. Right. Now you talked about skills being one of your pieces too. What are some of the skills you think a salesperson has to have? And these, sales and skills and knowledge and behavior, those can kind of fall together a little bit. So it's okay if we're going to talk about similar things, but we might use different wording.
I believe you need to have a sales process. You need to be able to have a system that you follow, that you apply, and you practice. And by creating a system, you're able to improve and adapt on it as the market changes, as the way people buy changes. You can't just go into a conversation winging it every time.
Yep.
And you're going to find that there's no way to improve a process that you just kind of ad lib at the time. And there's certain opportunities to be able to ad lib in steps within the sales process, but the overall system and process should be the same. And it should always start with building a relationship of trust and rapport with the other person.
Yeah, I think most people, many salespeople, many mediocre salespeople have no process at all. They go in, they do some chit chat, they show them some product and hope somebody buys it. Right. And if that doesn't work, they'll go chit chat with somebody else and show them their catalog, and they have no idea of what to do to move that sale forward. They hope just by, you talked about many weeks ago, we talked about behavioral salespeople who rely on their friendliness, right?
Right.
And that's their whole process. I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice person to be around. I'm
great.
I'm pleasant. Okay. Good. Well, you need to be more than that. You need to direct the sale.
Right. Prospects are committing to making a change, and they have to be able to defend their position, and they need to be able to rely on the person they're defending.
So the process means you have to be a good communicator. And because you and I talk so much about questions, you started off with saying, here's a question you should ask. You got to be a good listener. Don't ask a question if you're not willing to listen to them with a full answer. So I think listening is a skill, and many people don't have that. They're always thinking about the next thing they want to say. They're not taking notes. They just they walk out of a meeting. They don't even know anymore what the customer wanted than when they walked in.
Exactly. And that's the essence of building trust and rapport, is listening.
Right. Other skills that you have that you see as important.
I think being able to ask questions that create a process from getting intellectual to emotional. People buy emotionally. We all have heard it. How are we applying that? How are we structured when our questioning process is created and implemented? Does it start intellectually and then get to emotional? Or are we just stopping and not getting emotional questions because our prospect is getting upset?
Mm-hmm.
Too often, salespeople back down when they get prospects engaged in a conversation and a prospect has to defend their current position.
Getting them upset is what starts the things moving.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. It's part of a conversation. If you can start getting into a conversation where they're emotionally involved, you've got them right where you want them.
Right.
Don't
and then they back off right where they have them.
Well, don't back off, but continue in a respectful manner and just say, I can tell this is not easy. I can tell this is something that you're not really happy about. My goal is for you and I to have a conversation, to talk about options, to figure out if there's a way for you and I to work together.
Right. And an honest conversation.
Yeah, and share with me as much as you want to share with me. Right. But I'm going to be able to tell you what we can do and we can't do. But the last thing that is going to hold everything up is if I don't have any information, I can't tell you how we can work together. And if I try to guess at a solution, I'm going to misprescribe it, and it's going to be the wrong situation.
Well, they always talk about salespeople being afraid of silence. I think it's that silence is when they've asked the very difficult question that's really put that person on the spot, that prospect or buyer on the spot, and they have to think about it. That's when you have to really be quiet and let them think.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them go through their process and be patient.
Right. Or shut up.
Yep. I write that in my documents as I'm working with clients quite often.
That's
SU,
good.
shut up.
That's good.
All right, a couple other skills, focus and diligence. And I think those are the skills that get you more appointments. It's not necessarily an appointment, but you have to be focused on what you're doing well and be diligent to your process and to your tasks at hand, which are the phone calls, the appointments, the things that build into the closed sale.
Right. And that requires some preparation too. Preparation is necessary if you're going to go on a sales call. Backing up a little bit on the questioning technique. I worked with a young guy who was just out of college. He was selling exercise equipment, and every time somebody came into the store and they started asking him questions, he kept answering the questions. And I go, why are they asking you that question? He goes, I don't know. They just asked me the question. I go, you know what? You got to remember, you're not in school anymore. You're not in college anymore. You're not being tested. So stop acting like you're being tested. In fact, I'll probably put that in the show notes now, another blog that I wrote. You're
good.
Not being tested.
Good.
So you need to be able to find out the reason why they're asking that question.
Right.
And stop answering questions without learning about the reason and the intent behind the content.
The other thing they don't know, or the other thing I don't see people doing is answering and then asking a question to follow up.
Right. Reversing.
So he's just being the shell answer man, right?
Right.
Here's a question I'll answer. Here's another question I'll answer it. And it's not really getting him closer to the sale. Or he doesn't know if it is. But if a client asks me a question, a prospect asks me a question, I give them a little bit of an answer, and then I follow it up with a question, which quite often, as you're saying, is tell me why that's important to you. Tell me what that means to you. If we can do that, what's the value to you?
Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What would that do for you? I don't know.
That's right.
Is that important?
Yep.
How important?
All right. My third step is knowledge. I know you had technical as one of your pieces, technical and conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
For me, knowledge means I need to know about my product and my service and how that applies to the customer needs.
Exactly. The value is defined in the application of the specifics.
Yep. And you talk about value, that's the value proposition, right?
Exactly.
I need to know what the value I'm bringing into this process is to you. And I have to have a number of different ones because I don't know exactly which one's going to be proper for you. Other knowledge pieces or technical pieces that you have?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. And I would just add the industry. You need to know broader. And this really goes back to the challenger sale. It goes back to what they're talking about in this presentation part in Beyond Selling Value. And that is you need to understand your industry enough that you can integrate what's going on in your organization with what's going on in their industry. So you look as much of an expert as possible.
And I want to add on to that, and maybe it's the same thing, Bill, but I think that product knowledge is important. I think it gives salespeople a tremendous amount of confidence when they have product knowledge. Here's where they're going to be a resource, and here's what's going to cause a conversation to start, and where the prospect's going to be most interested in leaning forward and listening to a salesperson if a salesperson brings market knowledge to the conversation. And market knowledge is very similar to industry knowledge. An application of the solution can then give stories to the market knowledge, the industry knowledge, and how your service affects companies and what they can expect from it.
Absolutely. You know what I would say? Examine yourself. Look for those areas where you need to improve your skills as a salesperson. So as I talked about in the opening, you're a professional. Start to act like one. Start to hone your skills, hone your process, learn about your industry, know more than your competition about how to be a professional salesperson, have the right attitude and mindset, and you're going to have a chance to win. So resources, you mentioned the Man in the Arena, and what was the other one that you're going to put on?
I'll have a blog on You're Not Being Tested.
You're Not Being Tested.
I think this is a great blog, and it's just really has a tremendous impact on the mindset of salespeople when they get into a conversation of stop just answering questions, finding out the intent behind the content.
And I've got a 2-part video, a little longer than my 2-minute ones if you've been watching those. It's called Behaviors That Promote Customer Loyalty. So many of these behaviors are behaviors you should exhibit as a sales professional. This segment of the Get in the Door podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door by Steve Kloida. Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
Our golden nugget today is a quote by Plato. I love Plato. I'm going to probably include more of them because I think they're very philosophical and they're built on a structure of logic and emotion. So here it is. A good decision is based on knowledge and not on numbers.
All right. You got to explain this one to me. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Knowledge. And I think knowledge.
Well, what's the difference between knowledge and numbers?
Well, numbers, I think, is related to a dollar amount. I think it's related to a price. I think knowledge, a decision is based on knowledge. And I think knowing the outcome, knowing the impact, knowing what you can expect and not expect is very important when people are making decisions. And this chapter is in the book is talking about decision making. So I think once we're having a conversation with somebody and we're talking about the impact, the outcome, the expectations, that's knowledge. Numbers is the price. Numbers is what the solution price is compared to with the cost, consequences, and risk, which is the knowledge. And I think we draw a contrast and a comparison between cost, consequences, and risk to price and numbers. The greater the contrast, the greater the value.
Let me see if I can simplify this for people like me.
Okay.
The price isn't really the objection.
Right.
It's something more, because if the product is right, the price is very seldom the problem.
If the prospect defines the value, they will pay the price.
Right.
Prospects define value. And that's what salespeople really overlook a lot, is the conversation that you have with a prospect and the questions that you ask the prospect is intended for them to understand the cost, consequences, and risk of inaction so that they are able to define the value of your solution so that they're willing to write out a check.
All right. If you want to learn more about all of this, go to getinthedoorpodcast.com. Leave us a note so you can get in the drawing for books. We have many more books to give away, one each week as we go through Beyond Selling Value. And all of this information will be in the show notes right on that page. So look for it there, though. You'll come in to get into our podcast. All the podcasts will be listed. Go find the one that you want to listen to, and all the show notes are there.
Next week, we're going to cover Chapter 8 of Beyond Selling Value, the inside stuff. And our topic is going to be on defining objectives.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.